dear students. Welcome to the next class of literary theory. We have already started with Marxism, but today we are going again for an introduction about Marxism from your textbook. We will discuss about historical materialism, dialectical materialism. We have already covered ideology based on superstructure, but we will take the notes from the textbook also. We will look from the textbook also. Let's get started. We are going to look into Marxism. German philosophers Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the 19th century, they made some observations based on the society. They formulated certain principles. And Marxism refers to philosophical principles, certain economical principles, certain political principles based on the society made by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. What is the connection with Marxism to literary theory or to literature? In literary theory, Marxism implies that reading the literature from the Marxist point of view. In literature, applying Marxist philosophy, understanding a work from Marxist point of view, understanding a literary work from the point of view of Marxist philosophy and principles. Both Marxism and Marxist criticism are very complex. These are not mere to study. These are not mere for academic subjects. And Terry Eagleton, Marxist critic, he says that
Terry Eagleton, the influential British Marxist critic, said that Marxism is a scientific theory of human societies. He talked about this in his work Marxism and Literary Criticism, which was published in the year 1976. Marxism is a scientific theory, and what does it based on? It is based on the theory of human societies, studying human society, and it is also in the practice of transforming them. Have to change the society. Marxism is a scientific theory about human society, and also it is a practice of transforming the society. Through Marxist criticism, when we apply Marxism in literature, we study the literature in terms of Marxism. Study the classes, the conflict between classes, the struggle between classes, and it allows the people to see the class struggle in a varied perspective. It shows the exploitation. Through Marxist criticism, through Marxist analysis of literature, people understand the exploitation. People understand the class struggles. And it delivers the story of struggles of people, and it also helps people to free themselves from exploitation and oppression. It is not always the slavery or the slave and the feudal lord. Oppression is not always in that sense. It is also in the sense of capitalist ideology. And people get to know about the exploitation, and by looking the literature in the Marxist point of view, they can try to free themselves from the exploitation and the oppression. Marxists believe that society has no classes. They aim for a society, a classless society they aim for. We have already studied that. And Terry Eagleton's other works, major works are Literary Theory and Introduction and Illusion of Postmodernism and so on. Marx and Engels did not formulate a literary theory based on their political and economic ideas. They did not formulate a literary theory, but they extended their thoughts and observations to the realm of literature. They extended their economic principles, their philosophical principles, and observations to the realm of literature and arts. And they also extended their thoughts and observations to the society, to the culture, to the social and cultural conditions. And they also focused on something else. They extended their thoughts and observations to the context in which literature is written. They looked into the context also. They looked into the society in which the author wrote a particular work, because the society influences the author. There are other critics also, there are other theorists also who have significantly contributed to Marxist thought. It include Vladimir Lenin, George Plekhanov, Leon Trotsky, George Lukács, Bertolt Brecht, Antonio Gramsci, Louis Althusser, Jean-Paul Sartre, Raymond Williams, Amy Sasher, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Ejaz Ahmed, Frederick Jameson, Terry Eagleton, and the Frankfurt philosophers. According to Terry Eagleton, Marxist criticism is an analysis of literature. According to that critic, Terry Eagleton, the British critic, Marxist criticism, it is the analysis of literature. But analyzing literature in terms of the historical conditions which produce it. Historical conditions, it explores the social context. It explores the political context of the literary text. It explores the economic context of the literary text, and it explores the cultural context of the literary text. Through the literary text, through the particular piece of work, you're getting the knowledge about the society. You're getting the knowledge about the economic conditions of that society. You're getting the knowledge about a culture about that society. You're also getting to know deeper about the political context of that society. Marxist criticism analyzes literature in all these terms. When we analyze Marxist theory in literature, you'll have to explore the social context, the political, economic, and cultural aspects of that literary text. Works of literature or any literary work are the products of history. Literature can be analyzed by looking at the society. Literature can be analyzed by looking at the material conditions. When we analyze Dickens' work, especially Oliver Twist, or any almost Dickens' works, when we analyze in the Marxist point of view, you'll have to explore the poverty. We'll be getting to know more about the class divisions in the society, the privilege of one class we can analyze. The condition of the society itself can be analyzed through the Marxist criticism. Marx gave more importance to materialism. Matter is important, and he opposed idealism. He gave more importance to the matter. According to Marx, the mode of production of material life determines the mode of production, that can be the labor, the raw material, or the instruments. These mode of production of the material life of the people determines altogether the social, political, and intellectual life process. That is the base. Base influences the superstructure. We have already dealt with base and superstructure. Base influences superstructure. We can say both influences. They got that relationship. Base also influences superstructure, and the superstructure also influences base. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their being, but on the contrary, their social being that determines the consciousness. The ideas of the society, particular ideas of the society. It is not keeping the society forward, or it is not moving the society forward. But what moves the society forward? The matter, the society, the societal structure, societal constructions, that determines the consciousness of the society. Marx defined history as a history of class struggle between the working class and the capitalist. The main idea of Marxism itself is the class struggle. And Marx defined history. It is the history of class struggle between the working class, the lower class, the proletariat class, the class struggle of working class people between or with the capitalist people, the bourgeois people. Bourgeois, they were against the bourgeois systems. Capitalism, they were against capitalism. They promoted cooperation rather than the capitalist ownership, or they rather than the private ownership. Marx emphasized on cooperative ownership. We have also looked into the base and superstructure. Base structure, that is the mode of production, forces and relations of production, that is the base structure. The raw material, labor, instruments, all these things comes under the base structure. The economic base, we can say, the economic base, that is the base structure. It is on which the society is built at. Economy of the society is the base. And the superstructure, what is the superstructure? The other institutions, other social institutions like art, literature, culture, cinema, whatever, religion, ideology, all these things. These are the superstructure, but these are really influenced by the base structure. They do not have any individual existence, because they are really influenced by the base structure, the economic structure. Base structure, the economic base determines the superstructure. It influences the superstructure, and it reflects the ideology of the ruling class. It reflects the ideology of the bourgeois class, capitalist class. Because the base structure is controlled by the ruling class. The forces of production, the mode of production, the labor, raw material, all these things are controlled by the ruling class, which is in power. So you can say superstructure reflects the ideology of the ruling class. Literature is not something that go against the culture, that go against the society, that go against the time period, but it is the product of that particular cultural background of the society. It is the product of that particular societal background, that particular society. It is a reflection of the society itself. It is a construct of the particular societies. No text, no literary work or the author can transcend the constraints of the society which he or she lives in. That is, no literary work or no author can leave behind the society, can leave behind the limits of the society in which they are living in. They cannot go beyond that society. See, very easy example. Now, earlier time we had a lot many patriarchal movies were there. Especially Jaira movies. They reflected the patriarchal society. What was they showcasing? The patriarchal ideology of the society. It was the trend of the society, or it was the society was rooted in the patriarchal mindset, patriarchal ideology, because women were not rising to many standards. They were focusing only on the family life and the upbringing of the children and all. But later on, we have witnessed changes in the movies and changes in the society also. Marx says that literature as a constituent element of the superstructure. Superstructure constitutes all these things: cultural elements, law, literature, art, religion, everything comes under superstructure. And literature is determined and controlled by the material productive forces of the society. That is, it is also influenced by the base. It is also get influenced by the base structure. Superstructure is influenced by the base structure. Literature is also influenced by, or literature is controlled by the material productive forces of the society. That is the base. സി ഇപ്പം നമ്മൾക്ക് നമ്മുടെ ചുറ്റിലും കാണുന്ന ഇപ്പം ഭയങ്കര ട്രെൻഡായിട്ട് വരുന്ന മൂവിയാണ് ഹോം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുള്ള മൂവി. ഒരുവിധം നിങ്ങളെല്ലാവരും കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. അതിൽ ആ മൂവി എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സംഭവം തന്നെ ഒരു സൂപ്പർ സ്ട്രക്ചറാണ്. സൂപ്പർ സ്ട്രക്ചറിൻ്റെ കീഴിൽ വരുന്നതാണ് മൂവി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ആ മൂവിയിൽ നമുക്ക് എന്താ കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്? ഒരു പുതിയ ഗാഡ്ജറ്റ്സ് വരുന്നതും അതിൻ്റെ പിന്നെ 2 ജനറേഷൻസ് തമ്മിലുള്ള ഗ്യാപ്പും ഒക്കെ നമുക്കതിൽ അനലൈസ് ചെയ്യാം. ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങൾ അനലൈസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. ഈ ഒരു ഫാക്ടർ മാത്രം നമുക്ക് അനലൈസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നതാണ്. ഗാഡ്ജറ്റ്സിൻ്റെ ഉപയോഗം എന്തോരം കൂടുതലാണ് നമ്മുടെ യങ്സ്റ്റേഴ്സിൻ്റെ ഇടയ്ക്ക് എന്നുള്ളത് അല്ലേ. അതെന്ന് പറയുന്നത് നമ്മുടെ സൊസൈറ്റിയുടെ ഒരു ബേസുമായിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് ലിങ്ക് ചെയ്ത് കിടക്കുന്ന സംഭവമാണ്. നമ്മുടെ എക്കണോമിയായിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് ലിങ്ക് ചെയ്ത് കിടക്കുന്ന സംഭവങ്ങളാണ് ഈ ഗാഡ്ജറ്റ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നതും. ദ മൂവി ഹാസ് ഒറിജിനേറ്റഡ് ഫ്രം ദിസ് കോൺസെപ്റ്റ് അല്ലേ. ഈ ഒരു കോൺസെപ്റ്റിൽ നിന്ന് തന്നെയാണ് ആ മൂവിയുടെ തന്നെ ഒറിജിൻ എന്ന് നമുക്ക് പറയാൻ സാധിക്കും. So isn't it the superstructure is determined by the base, or they both influence each other? Base and superstructure influences each other, and the superstructure can be religion, can be literature, can be cinema, is determined and controlled by the base. It is controlled and determined by the material productive forces of the society. Marx modified this theory and stated that the relation between base and superstructure is dialectical. Relation between base, the economic base, that is labor, raw material, tools, the factories, or you can say the transportation, the science, technology, everything. These things comes under the base, economic base. And the connection between, or the relation between base and the superstructure, other things, that is I told you, that is cinema, literature, religion, law, these things. It is, the relation is dialectical. What does it mean, dialectical? Which means both base and superstructures mutually influence each other. They coexist, they influence each other. And the later Marxist critics like Raymond Williams, another critic, Raymond Williams, upheld this position. Marxist philosophical approach to the world is based on dialectical materialism. It believes that dialectical materialism believes that world is made of matter. Marx gave importance to matter, material things, elements. Then they do not give importance to the abstract things, but they gave importance to matter, material things, and that constitutes the objective reality. And that constitutes the reality in front of us, the actual things in front of us, the actual reality. The world is made of matter, and it constitutes the reality in front of us. They are not concerned about the abstract things. Ideas originate only as a result of interplay of material forces. The ideology, religious ideologies or the superstructure, the ideas, it originate as a result of interplay of material forces, or the interplay of material objects. Ideology is deeply connected, or ideas are deeply connected with the material objects. Material objects are connected with the base. Material objects are connected with the economy. So the ideas originate only as a result of
interplay of material forces, and Marxism rejected the philosophical position that ideas create and control the material world. They rejected this notion that ideas control the material world. It is not like that. Material world controls material world controls the ideas, or material world actually creates ideas or different ideologies, but according to the will of the people in power. Their relationship is that of dialectical. That means they influence each other. The material forces and ideas are getting influenced by each other. Everything except change changes. Everything changes around us. Everything changes. This continuous moving and change are the driving forces of human history. Everything we around us are changing. We are changing. Society is changing. Dialectics is nothing more than the science of the general laws of motion, changes, and the development of nature, human society, and thought, says Engels in Anti-Düring. It is a work which was published in 1878 in German. Dialectics is nothing more than the science of the general laws of motion. That is, laws of motion and development of nature, human society, and thought. It sees, dialectics sees history as the history of struggle of material forces, of contrasting interests for domination and control. That is, material forces struggle for domination. For example, capitalist people are in competition with other capitalists. Why they are in competition? Because for market share, because for profit. They are in competition. And competition motivates the capitalist to earn more profit. And the capitalist or the material forces, they also are in competition for the raw materials, for the market share. The capitalists who have multinational companies can be in conflict with other national capitalists. And the competition actually affects the working class people to accept lower wages, or even it can lead to unemployment. Marx already defined history as the history of class struggle between two classes, between working class and capitalist. And it is based on, the struggle is based on the base. Struggle is based on the economy. Why there is class disparity? Because of the change in economic system. Marx's categories of social analysis are really shaped by this materialist perspective. Everything is based on materialism. The class is also defined by Marx according to how much of the means of production as owned by people. In this sense, the core of Marxism is historical and dialectical materialism. Historical materialism. History has been defined, or history has been as the history of struggle of material forces. The connection between the material forces of contrasting interest for domination and control. Dialectical materialism is that they believe that world is made of matter, things, and it constitutes the reality. People's thought or their character or their actions are shaped by the conditions in the material world, or shaped by the material conditions of the world around them. That is dialectical materialism. Historical materialism is that it understands the society and the history. It understands history as the result of material conditions, history as the struggle of material forces. It is the struggle of material forces for domination and control. Raymond Williams summarizes the project of Marxist criticism within aesthetics as of three main kinds.
Marxist criticism is summarizing into three major principles: an attempted assimilation of literature into ideology, the assimilation of literature into ideology, how ideology influences literature, how literature proclaims ideology of the society, how it is reflected in literature. And the second principle is that an effective and important inclusion of popular literature, that is, through Marxist criticism, popular literature is being effectively included. They talked about the common people, talked about the working class, the popular literature, the literature of the people, as a necessary but neglected part of literary tradition. See, earlier, at the time of Elizabethan period and all, the writers were glorifying, praising the ruling class. They were praising the queen. They were praising the king. They neglected the common people. But in Marxist criticism, they include popular, common people, gave importance to the working class. And the third principle is that a sustained but uneven attempt to relate literature to the social and economic history, the related literature to the society, the related literature to the economics within which it had been produced. Literature is being produced within the social and economic conditions of the society. And they tried to relate literature to the society, tried to relate literature to the economic conditions. And children, we have already discussed about ideology. Ideology, the important concept in Marxism, and it is originated with Marx, but it is later developed by other theorists. According to Marx, ideology is a system of false consciousness, or it is a system of knowledge about the real economic structure of the society and the power relations within it. Why ideology is called false consciousness? Because it prevents people from understanding their position in the society. People consider their exploitation as natural, or they are not aware of their exploitation. They consider the class struggle or the class disparities as natural. This false consciousness prevents people from understanding their position in society with respect to the mode of production, the base. It belongs to the superstructure of the society. Ideology belongs to the superstructure. Literature is viewed by Marxists as a subsect of ideology. But literature, however, possesses limited autonomy. That means it is heavily influenced by ideology. It cannot be independent. It is really influenced by ideology. Terry Eagleton says that ideology works in such a way that social domination of one class, that the ruling class over another, the lower class, is seen by most people as natural or not seen at all. Ideology, the patriarchal ideology, the women are not identifying, they are getting exploited. They see it as natural. According to Terry Eagleton, ideology has to do with legitimating the power of dominant social group or class. Ideology protects the ideas of dominant group. It justifies the power of dominant group over the working class, over the lower class. Ideology keeps everything justifiable. Ideology can be understood as the complex process of making meaning, signs, values, and conventions in a society which legitimizes the dominant political power. You've already seen that. It is the complex process of making meaning, signs, values, and conventions in a society through ideologies. Certain values are conveyed in the society. Ideology of a good family life. Male should dominate the family. That is the law that is conveyed through ideology for a good family. And ideology justifies the dominant political power, that it is natural. The domination of ruling classes, natural. The domination of capitalist classes, natural. It was Louis Althusser who gave a clear definition to the concept by combining the theoretical precepts of Marx, Gramsci, and Lacan. He combined the theoretical precepts of Marx, Gramsci, and Lacan. He also defined the ideological state apparatus, ISA. We have studied that. And ISA legitimizes and validates political power. I'm not going into detail of ISA. We have already covered ISA when we studied Louis Althusser. Raymond Williams, the British Marxist critic, he categorizes social structure variants. He categorizes as residual, dominant, and emergent. Dominant is that the ideology that is followed by the majority in the present. Dominant culture, dominant ideology is that it is followed by the majority in the present. Earlier times, patriarchal society, that is the dominant ideology. The man should lead the family. Man should go out and work for the family. Women are supposed to be inside the houses. That was the dominant ideology earlier. Residual ideology denotes ideologies that are outdated but still exist as residual. Residual ideology that are existing as residual elements. For example, matriarchal system. It exists there, but it is no longer prominent one. Women have more importance in the family rather than male. It existed in the earlier societies. Even in the dominant culture was prominent. It existed as residual. And the last one, emergent ideology. Ideology in the process of becoming dominant and will be directly opposite to the existing dominant ideology. The emergent ideology or the emergent culture, what is that? The emerging one, which is not dominant but can be dominant later. The women are also going outside for work. Nowadays, it is not a new thing that women are going outside and working for the family. But emerging culture is that men are also cooking. Men are also into the child care. Isn't it? I am taking this example because everyone can relate to this. So the three social structure variants are residual, dominant, and emergent. Dominant, which is followed by the majority in the present. Residual, that is it is outdated but still exists. And emergent is that emerging, becoming dominant. ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഫിലിംസിൻ്റെ കാര്യം തന്നെ എടുക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ മുമ്പുണ്ടായിരുന്ന ഒരു ട്രെൻഡ് എന്തായിരുന്നു ഫിലിംസിൻ്റെ കാര്യത്തിൽ ഡോമിനൻ്റ് ആയിട്ട് നിന്നിരുന്ന ഏതായിരുന്നു? ഒരു 2000-ന് ശേഷം കുറേ നാളുകൾക്ക് ഒരു സ്റ്റാർഡം കീപ്പ് ചെയ്യുന്ന രീതിയിലുള്ള ഫിലിംസാണ് വന്നുകൊണ്ടിരുന്നത് അല്ലേ? സ്റ്റാർസിന് വാല്യൂ കൊടുത്ത് സ്റ്റാർഡത്തിന് ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻസ് കൊടുത്തിട്ടുള്ള മൂവീസായിരുന്നു. അതിന്ന് റെസിജ്വലായിട്ട് കിടന്നിരുന്നത് വേറൊരു ടൈപ്പ് മൂവീസായിരുന്നു. അതിനു മുമ്പ് ഇറങ്ങിയിരുന്ന നോട്ട് സോ റിയലിസ്റ്റിക് ബട്ട് ഒരു ഇമാജിനേഷനും ഒക്കെ കൂടി കലർത്തിയിരുന്ന ഒരു തരം മൂവീസ് അവിടെ റെസിജ്വൽ ആയിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ആൻഡ് ഒരു എമേർജിങ് ആയിട്ട് വന്ന മൂവിയുടെ ട്രെൻഡ് ഏതായിരുന്നു? ഒരു 2010 ഒക്കെ ആയപ്പോൾ കുറച്ചും കൂടി റിയലിസ്റ്റിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള മൂവീസാണ് വന്നുകൊണ്ടിരുന്നത്. ആ ഒരു എമേർജിങ് ട്രെൻഡ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഇപ്പോൾ ഡോമിനൻ്റ് ആണ് അല്ലേ? ഇപ്പം നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നത് ഇമാജിനേഷൻ എന്ന് വരുന്ന മൂവീസ് അല്ല, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സ്റ്റാർഡത്തിന് വാല്യൂ കൊടുക്കുന്ന മൂവീസ് അല്ല നമ്മുടെ സിനിമകളിൽ ഇപ്പം നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്. ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് ക്ലോസ്ലി റിലേറ്റഡ് വിത്ത് ദി റിയാലിറ്റി. അത് മുമ്പ് എമേർജൻ്റ് ആയിരുന്നു, ബട്ട് നൗ ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് ദി ഡോമിനൻ്റ്. Following Althusser, Frederick Jameson also connects ideology to the concepts of Lacan. What does he say? Following Althusser, he reiterates the ideology. Jameson says that ideology, it is the representation of the subject's imaginary relationship to his or her real conditions of existence. Please study all these things, all these quotes as such, so that you can include in your essays when it is asked about ideology. You can say what Frederick Jameson said about ideology. It is a representation of the subject's, a person's imaginary relationship to his or her real conditions of existence. Jameson felt that it is very important to identify the ideological dominant of each historical period. He argues that the cognitive mapping, that is, the identifying dominant ideology of the present, will help people to change the dominant ideology of the postmodern. Understanding dominant ideology is very much important so that people can change it. People can transform themselves. Identifying the dominant ideology or understanding the cognitive mapping. Cognitive mapping should be done so that the people can change the dominant ideology and they can work for a better society. So children, I am stopping here. So the next class we will start with Frankfurt School of Marxism. So study well, read your text well. Happy learning. Thank you.